Well, hello. Well, it's a small audience, which is great, because we will have a very intimate, nice conversation. We're recording here, we streaming there, so whoever is not here physically, well, okay, so this is just basic rules. It's a safe space. Don't be bad, be good. And we're doing this, right, and recording and everything, and then I can take your picture and put it on my website and say that I'm running cool events. Okay, so what it's all about. User experience design was actually created not by me, it was created by Nic Tinworth. He died from cancer, but you can find a trail in Hong Kong because he was a runner. Nic Tinworth's trail. I recommend it, it's very tough because he was a tough guy. He started this community to connect people who use experience design. User experience design is a craft of making experience for other people with digital mostly, but also with hardware, any kind of technology. So he started that because he was one of the first user experience designers in Hong Kong. He worked in Hong Kong for 25 years. Last work was EY. I think it was like a waves, some kind of innovation thing. But, so he worked there, and he started this community, and then he died, and he only gave one talk on value of design, which I organized, and since that, I'm the organizer. The reason why I'm organizer because I'm organizing it. There's no other reason. It's not my thing. I never brought any rights for that. I just step in and doing this. For some years, I was like, hey, anyone maybe who is older and smarter can do that, but nobody's stepping. So this is why I'm doing it. Then also, I'm the guy who's keep talking about design for good, and there's kind of two emphases: design and design for good. Like there's two different ways of understanding it. First is kind of diving a bit deeper what design is all about, maybe what Nic was talking about, value of design itself. But then also commitment to design, design for good. And maybe another one is maybe make a little bit better. Yeah. So how we do it? We spend a lot of time last 2 years doing this, like on Slack, on Discord, like chatting with each other. Then we also did this quite a bit. Some Zoom calls and some people who are there, not there. Avinash used to be based here. He moved back to Europe. Michelle, she's actually from Hong Kong. She's Hong Konger. She was internship at Amazon, and then she did her first startup, Viva, straight out of college in America. Then she come back to Hong Kong to see her parents and kind of live through these very tough years, 2-3 years. Now she's in Vancouver. Thomas is Argentina. He's doing design project with the government, trying to make people pay taxes. I think it's a very hard job. Well, David used to work at South China Morning Post. I don't know where he's right now. Brian is very active in Hong Kong right now doing mindfulness. Joshua Davies happened to be in the room over there. Yeah, so we've done this quite a bit for the last 5 years, actually, but especially during COVID times, that was the thing. But now I'm very excited because we're doing this again. This happened a couple months back. So later today, we're going to sit in a circle. Each of you will have the opportunity to speak and share. And also we're doing this. This is today, this is yesterday, this is the day prior to that. We meet one-on-one and we talk, we have coaching sessions, we discuss what design is, what it means, design for good. This is Paulina. This is, I forgot his name, I just met him today, I need to check. My memory for names is horrible, but he does water. And this guy is administrator at this, cafe, when they do coding. I don't know how it works, but it's a cafe, it's also coding classes, your face here. So they played really nice music. And this is how we connected and start talking about design. So user experience design is a community, this one. But what I do is Posit, it's my company, and also it's a community behind. For the last, again, 7 years, it was always Posit. I started Posit and I was introduced to this community and I continue doing Posit. So Posit is it's a network type of organization. It means that Posit itself is very nimble and small. But we have connections with many, many different places, like this one, that one. SUPACITY is nice as well. They're going to have a nice party on Friday. And then many, many, many more. what I did over the years is that I tried to help other organizations to create communities. So with EdTech Club, I was in the first meeting, and then I helped them to set up everything. With some of the communities, I helped to build Discord, some Slack, now myself using WhatsApp quite a bit. Today I'm introducing a new member in our family, Lotifiles. Lotifiles is a startup out of Southeast Asia, actually. They started in Maldives, and they built a global company to deliver animations and stuff. So today is a sponsored food, which you have to eat. I cannot get out of here without this food. It's really nice. The food actually made by Blue Lotus, which is a kitchen made by immigrants to Hong Kong. For 16 years they cook it really well. This is Zam. I think actually she's a cook, but she was busy. She was cooking, so she's not in the selfie. But this guy was not cooking, so he was available. So Lotifiles today paid for this experience, and they sponsored that. So we don't really take money for anything but to sponsor experiences. We're not really a commercial event, this one. We make a little bit money on the commission, but we just put it in, on the company account. We don't make money from that. Okay, 7:22. Then we're going to talk about regenerative design. I will set the theme, and then we have these two amazing speakers sharing. Yep. So the theme is regenerative design. An idea is that we happen to have like a planet. On the planet, we have like a system. It's very like a small layer. The whole thing travels in the space. Outside, there's gas. There's nothing grows there. There's no food, there's no people. It's not fun outside of this planet. On the planet's surface is very, very small. You are hanging out there. And you also can build buildings, chairs, you can design the world and stuff. This one looks to me nice. We're very lucky in Hong Kong to still have this. This is Lantau, my hike yesterday, or day prior to that, with my kids. I'm not showing you my kids because it's not about them, it's about this. So this is like a water supply we have. This is prison where we put people who are misbehaving. But this is really nice mountains and ecosystem. If you sit there, the sound will be birds singing. So there's a good research showing if you as a human see sparkling water and birds singing, you feel really nice. The reason, because it's conducive to your survival. If you like going around and you hear birds and you see the water, more likely you're going to survive. Then around 300 years ago, we got obsessed with technology and stuff, and there was a thing called Bauhaus. Everything you see around it right now is designed, right? This is design, technology design. In many ways was inspired by Bauhaus. They designed modern buildings, they designed modern, like Bosch, I mispronounce this, but basically German design, which is like the best cars, the best toasters, the best everything. So this was 100 years ago, right? So they were kind of late into the game and they like redefined it completely. But now they kind of realized last year that technology shifted and changed quite a bit. So we designers kind of trying to do a lot more, not only create this tables, chairs, and this. We actually designing organizations themselves, we designing experiences as we do with UXD and design, we design how you connect, right? So today you're right here. If you don't know it by heart, probably use Google Maps, right? You learn about this through LinkedIn or Meet Up or WhatsApp, or I was maybe, rare case, I was actually telling you to come, right? It's rare. Usually, it's all facilitated through technology, right? There's not going to be me in a body jumping around and saying you should come, right? Typically, you engage with social media, something like this, which means a designer who designed that have suddenly a magical power over you to shape your preferences, to choose what you're going to do today. And social media have disproportional power today to set your political views, to understand you better than your loved ones. 150 likes on Facebook and you know that you love. You don't know that, they do know that. They may or may not use it. So this book is about, it's a basically white book, you know, like white paper, but this is like a thick, so it's a book. White book about how might we redesign the whole study of design? How might we redesign education in design? Because it's time to do that. So I went around Hong Kong, I put it everywhere, just for fun yesterday. And there's a lot of inspiration coming from Hong Kong itself. Hong Kong itself is one of the most diverse places on earth, one of the most on one hand, we waste in a lot, but actually, statistically speaking, we live so dense that energy usage per person is still really good. We're not burning as much gasoline as Americans do in the cars, we travel with MTR, so we can afford to do stupid things and still be very sustainable compared to the rest of the world. The reason, because we pack together, and 70% of the land is park. So it's really nice to go for the hike, the mental health is better. So it is a challenge for us to how to redesign design, and there seems to be a few things which are important. We cannot anymore just design stuff ignoring the rest, right? We cannot design a table without thinking about how this table going to emerge and decay, right? So metal goes into it, wood goes into it, where the wood comes from, where the metal comes from, who does that, how they do it, is it like slavery, or it's like a normal job, or it's a normal job, it's like slavery. So we need to understand that. And table is relatively simple. Appears as though, like, we're actually losing a lot of knowledge in craftsmanship, right? Like, it's actually not that simple. But because of industrial methods, it seems simple, so we use machines, they do it for us, and we keep losing the, Japanese art of doing joints. If you ride a bicycle, it's really nice to repair your bicycle and kind of engage with it, understand how it works. If you drive a car, good luck, you're probably not going to do that unless you dedicated your whole life to it. If you drive an iPhone or this iPad or this laptop, right? If it's broken, you don't know what to do. Nothing you can do. So technology becomes so complicated and so disconnected from you as a user, you actually don't own anything. Someone else created this, not one person, like 1 million of people necessary for you to just survive today. Roughly 1 million of people need to be on Earth for you to be living your lifestyle and working very hard, right? So we are very interdependent. So the new study of design have to start from there to understand that we cannot anymore design things with the waste which is going to poison, or with the waste it's going to go into, like Facebook, kind of screw our democracy or screw our mental health. Instagram is increasing the suicide in girls by 30%. Probably I don't want this for my daughter, right? Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the right thing to do to increase suicide in girls. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't to me.
Well, it's a question. It's an open question. So this guy's asking all this questions, seems to be asking all the right questions. What is good about this book, when I look through, like, oh, okay, yet another bunch of white dudes going to tell us how to do design. No, actually a lot of women and a lot of Asian people there, which was nice to see. Like, I was like, okay, still very opening, like the opening is going from like Rams, right? He's like a very important white dude. And then there's like a lady who is running European Union, right? They all white. But then it goes to more diversity. So I did a talk at PolyU a couple of days back. You can subscribe to our YouTube, you can check this talk. It's all about design for good. Today is not about me, so I'm going to pass to my colleagues. Scan it if you want. Have a second of truth when I force you to do that, right? And then when you force to do that and you do that, you don't need to watch the video actually. You just subscribe because we need more subscribers. We want to do live streams, and for that we need 100 people. And right now it's like 60 or something. But then when you subscribe, maybe at some point you like leisurely, you're on your sofa and you're like, what to do today? And like, oh, another video from Ilya.
I subscribe.
Thank you.
I can vouch for the fact that there are many videos when he goes on hikes.
Thank you. Oh, this video will be, because I'm standing too close. I need to remember about these 2 points. Okay. So we're talking about regenerative design, but before we can talk about that, we need to look a minute to our sponsors.
Oh, I guess I don't have a huge amount to say, especially once you've done all that about regenerative design.
Well, you have to say something about
Well, I have to say something. Well, hello, that's my name. My name is Ching. I work at Garage Society. That's a space you're in. We're a co-working space. Oh no, I went the wrong way. Oh, there we go. We're a co-working space. We have 5 locations. We're really happy to, always be a venue sponsor for UXD Meet Up. Lots of different kind of meetups and communities floating around the city. I think you mentioned that you haven't always been the instigator of this, and I think we've been with UXD since the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not here.
I mean, I wasn't here either, so I don't know. So I work at something called Garage Academy. That's workshops, kind of different meetups, stuff like this, to talk about important things that might be interesting. Some stuff that might be interesting is we have, for International Women's Day coming up, we have something about impactful branding for the purpose-driven economy. We have 2 female founders, which I think should just be called founders, kind of talking about their journey of how they built their brands and how they kind of embrace equity. That's the hashtag this year with their brands and creating a better world. And then we also have e-commerce day coming up at the end of the month. We're working with Pickup, Sleep, Flow, and Boutier for a little mini conference in the evening time. So they have little keynotes about people who run e-commerce or are involved, and I guess during the pandemic they had a big boom, so how do you keep that going? And then Ilya would like me to mention that Posit also has a workshop coming up soonish. Would you like to say anything about this, Ilya?
Well, I hope 15 actually, so maybe in between of these 2, it's going to be this one. I'm a Notion ambassador, so we didn't done Notion event for a while. So I want to do Notion, knowing this Notion's my workshop about that. We're probably going to do event when we do sharing how people use Notion, and then we're going to do workshop. Hopefully here, we will see. Then we're also going to do prototype with theoretical methods, which means prototyping faster, which means failing faster and then learning what you're actually doing faster. And your identity is my signature stuff when you do presents. And it's really helpful with research and ability to actually create something new with your team. So this one I do publicly and I do it for corporates as well. So soonish, we just rented the space and we started to integrate ourselves inside Garage Academy.
They'll be in Shawon or they'll be here?
Well, depends on what we will have.
We'll have that conversation later.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at Garage Society, Garage Asia online. If you want to follow us, if you want to ask about upcoming events or workspace, you can come talk to me. And yeah, I'll pass it back over to Swim first.
To me.
To Ilya.
Thank you, Ching. So today we have 2 speakers. Aleksandra Grabska, I think it's your first time speaking in Hong Kong, correct? You're from Poland?
Yeah.
I remember that. You will tell a little bit about yourself when you come on stage, okay? And we also have Joshua Davies. You spoke at least 3 times in different events. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay, cool.
You've spoken from a Future, which is our festival about speculative design.
Yes.
At least once, maybe twice. You were on UXD Meet Up, which is another one like this, but more international. And then I think you've been on this one as well, maybe. Maybe not.
Lose track.
Maybe it's the first time you're on this one, but you've been on 2 other events I run.
Definitely something. You have a photo. So
I have 2. So, Aleksandra, please. This is yours?
Music on?
Probably not.
Oh, just check.
I will, yes.
It's going to make the talk seem too upbeat.
Hello everyone. As Ilya has already mentioned, my name is Aleksandra and I come from Poland, but actually currently I live in Indonesia, so I come from Indonesia to here. I'm a product designer and service designer and also a design consultant. And I'm really interested in system thinking and communication, and that's what I incorporate into my everyday design work. And today I will tell you just a tiny little bit about attention, which can be also used as a regenerative practice. But I would like to start with a simple question. How are you? And probably there is a tiny bit of chance, you don't have actually to even say it out loud, but there is probably a tiny bit of chance that you in your head are curating the answer, thinking like, oh, what can I say? Or maybe, does she even want to know how do I really feel?
You don't.
Do I really want to know? And actually, this is a very simple yet super powerful exercise on attention. Because how are you is a great practice that gives you two possibilities. One, to reveal yourself. You can be up in the mood to tell me, or maybe you're talking with your friend and your friend asks you, how are you? And you're okay with telling them the truth or whatever you want to tell them. But actually there is a second invitation in this question. There is an invitation to go inwards and to check with yourself, how am I? What is alive inside of me? And to take this even 2 seconds break and think about what is happening inside of you, not what is really happening around. Not taking your attention out, but bringing it backwards to you and focusing on yourself, basically. And it really, as I mentioned, it really doesn't even matter if you answer out loud or not, because you can do this journey silently in your head, and we have it proven actually by science that it works, even if you just say it in your head, even just if you don't even say it, if you just notice it in your head. And I want to show you exactly why such attention exercises are very powerful and are great regenerative practice for you, maybe. So a tiny bit more about regenerative practices. I have taken the regenerative leadership principles, and when you really think about them and read through them, let me read them for you. Life-affirming, ever-changing and responsive, relational and interconnected, diverse, cyclical and seasonal. And if you think about them, they are actually, all of them are connected to attention and to grounding somehow. So life-affirming is about creating a space. And attention allows you to create a space to grow, to evolve, and to actually give the attention to what is alive. Ever-changing and responsive is about facilitating and listening, and about adaptive systems which are also based on attention, because we cannot listen without attention. Relational and interconnected, same as diverse, are also about the relations between systems, and the relations cannot exist basically without listening in some kind, not even listening to the words, but listening to what's going on one side, another side, and maybe even one more. And cyclical and seasonal is actually my personal favorite, because it reminds us that we cannot thrive all the time. We are working in cycles, the same way that we function during the day and then we go to sleep at night, probably the same way we function at work. Some days are better, some days are much worse.
Is it like a book or is it like a website? Maybe we can find more about this.
Yes, sure. You can just simply type in Google regenerative design and leadership. And the principles are in the book about regenerative design, but you can also use a TED Talk, for example.
Okay.
I can send you the link to Posit, because there are many resources. Actually, it's very easy to find. Yeah, and the last one, as I mentioned, is my favorite, because it reminds us that sometimes we are up, sometimes we are down, and that we need this restorative potential, this possibility to get rest and ground our energy and ourselves to be able to thrive again later. So when we look at those principles, they actually are very connected to attention, all of them. Evolving, reacting to the changes and relationships, every single one of this quality is basically connected to attention. There is this great quote about the leadership, which says that the qualities of leadership are simple. They all have to do with being able to listen well. And actually, all of us are leaders. Leadership is not just a position. When we are facilitating a meeting, we are a leader. When we are talking to a group of people, we can be a leader. And maybe you are asking yourself like why you should bother with attention. Exactly, that's why. Being able to listen well is one of the main principles of great leadership, but actually, what does it mean to listen well? Being able to listen well, it doesn't mean that you just sit silently and listen to someone. It just, you're just in the space when someone is talking and you just hear the voice, you hear them speaking. Listening is something much more. Listening and communicating is 70% you listening to someone who is speaking, but also 30% listening to yourself. And creating this tension in the space when someone is speaking to you and you at the same time are checking with yourself like, what does it do for me? What is happening in myself? Being curious about what happens when you listen to the story from the other person. And maybe you will answer back, maybe you won't. But first you need to settle with this information coming to you and thinking like what you really think about it. And maybe you actually are sometimes doing this because you hear your friends speaking and you're like thinking in your head, is it really like that? What I think about it? But what is also very important is to see what are you feeling, what emotions are happening inside of you when you hear the people speaking. And just taking this time to catch this thought like, oh, I thought this when my friend said something, it's already an exercise in attention. We don't need mindfulness, 20 minutes meditation. This very quick thing can already change the way we are communicating with people, because actually communication is about shifts in attention. Sometimes I'm giving you attention when I'm listening, and I'm creating this beautiful space when you can share openly, and then you ask me a question and the attention shifts. So it requires a constant attention on who is currently leading the conversation, the engagement. The same goes with empathy. If you want to be an empathetic person, probably most of us would love to. That's a great quality. Every HR person will tell us that. And also, everyone designer should be like empathetic person. We want to empathize with our users, with our stakeholders. And empathy is actually a quality in which we create space full of curiosity to listen to the other person, but at the same time to check with ourselves, how do we feel when this person is speaking, to be able to empathize and embody these words that the second person is telling us. So I create this inner space in myself to invite what the other person is telling me. And how to apply this attention in practices in daily work, because probably everything I'm telling you now is a little, blah blah about how attention is important and what it does for us, how it's great in communication, but how to apply it in a daily practice, it's actually very, very simple. You can start with grounding focused exercises, like for using how are you question. Every time someone asks you how are you, you can choose to not answer within 2 seconds or 2 milliseconds even. You can choose to start with closing your eyes or even not, and just thinking, how am I? Stopping, pausing for a second, and checking in with yourself. You don't have to, as I mentioned, meditate 20 minutes per day or anything like that. And those quick exercises are great because if you are leading or you have your team, probably it will be not so easy to implement big changes right away. No one will be very happy if you introduce a new meeting every week, where we will be now sitting as a team and meditating, because most probably they are already done with so many meetings they have. So another great thing is actually introducing breaks, spaces for people where they don't have to do anything and they can actually decide what they want to do with their time. Another great idea, attention shift exercises. There is a great exercise which we can do also remotely. I actually personally, I love this exercise remotely. People are joined in breakout rooms in pairs, and they have 3 or 4 minutes. First person starts by asking a question, by telling, "Oh, I see," or "I hear," referring to something they see in the background, for example, which is great because when we are in the remote environment, we have much different backgrounds than sitting in one room. So I start telling, for example, "Oh, Joshua, I see you have your computer open." And then you go to the second part. "So I assume you're working currently." And then Joshua can answer like, "Oh, actually I'm not working,
I'm adding quotes about listening based on what you're saying.
Yeah, for example. And then we learn to shift our attention. But second, also, we boost our creativity because we got this information that, oh, actually my assumption was wrong. And this exercise works magic in the remote environment. I highly recommend that too. But also attention shift exercises are also liberating structures that Joshua will mention in a second, which are also a great grounding exercise. Other ones, maybe more requiring a bit more effort, are empathic listening exercises. For example, non-violent communication exercises, which I really recommend to you, and design warm-ups and cool-downs rituals instead of stand-ups and statuses. So instead of telling what we have to do today, what we have to focus on this week, maybe how do we feel actually today? And how do we approach life this week? We've done it with one of my teams, and it was amazing to see. We combined it with the status, but mostly attention was put on warm-ups and cool-downs. Warm-ups on Mondays and cool-downs on Fridays. And it was great to see how our team could bond, because it was about how was your weekend and what was important for you during those days where you were at work, and what is important to you today, what is alive for you, not which task has the biggest priority. So I really encourage you to try some of this, even the simplest ones being a break between work or approaching how you question a bit differently. And I give the mic to
Already introduced me. My name is Joshua. Joshua. Either one's fine. Yeah, thank you. Originally from Hawaii, but outside the States now for like 21 years. Last like 7 here in Hong Kong, something like that. Doing this for a long time. Last year did this in 35 plus countries virtually. 2019, 25 plus face-to-face, mostly like Fortune 100s and like some nonprofits and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But I'm actually kind of curious today to sort of just like go over a couple key questions with you. And I fully encourage like participants, not passengers. If you've got questions, feel free just to interrupt me, shout it out. It's more entertaining that way. Plus, I've had a very, very long day of training. I was leading a leadership forum from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. today, so my brain is slightly off there in other places. So we're just going to talk about kind of why we care, what it is, and how we can use it, talking about liberating structures. But honestly, I just want to put a quick question before you that sort of gets the whole point of it. Would you want to live in this apartment? Now, let me show you the outside before you make judgment on it. This is the inside. It's one example of the inside. It's a whole complex called the Reversible Destiny Lofts. It is actually in Japan. It's in Japan. Would you like to live there? Yes, no, or maybe if it was free. I knew Ilya was going to say yes. I'm getting a no from you, sir. Even if it's free, that's a no, hard no. Free? No, maybe it's free. Yeah, and guess what this is for? What it's for? It's built with a very specific purpose. Last time I did this, somebody said it was built for cats. It kind of does look like that. It's not built for cats, although that'd be awesome. What's it built for? Who's it built for?
Patients.
Patients, or what did you say?
Patients.
Patients. Oh, like medical patients.
Yeah.
Good idea. Might be slight overlap there. Any other?
Students.
Not students, actually opposite end of the spectrum, unless they're very elderly students, because this is actually a retirement home. So this is built, I know it doesn't look like the typical retirement home, and that's honestly on purpose. So what they found is that from their research that cognitively people's decline was faster if they were in a more traditional, I wouldn't say boring, but a more traditional retirement home. But the theory behind this is that by creating unique, unusual spaces, it helps us young longer. Going kind of the Churchill quote, we shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us. So we shape our space, it shapes us, or as Priya Parker said, great quote from The Art of Gathering, the way we gather matters. So this idea of shaping spaces. So why am I talking about this? Because liberating structures is about shaping conversational spaces. And it's something that I do in my practice all the time with clients. It's not the entire thing we do, but it's a big part of it. So an example of this would be like, this is like Camp David. There's a lot of things that the US does wrong politically with things. One of the very few things that's actually nice is they've got this facility called Camp David where they do negotiations and type stuff. And the only point I want to make about it is that for the negotiations, they're not at a table face to face. They are like this, walking side by side. Because they found in terms of people's dynamics, simply changing the way we have our conversations, walking side by side completely changes the freedom we have to have that conversation. So again, shaping our space changes everything. So with liberating structures and any of the kind of stuff we do, our goal is simple. It's to consciously shape our spaces and patterns of interaction to create deeper conversations. That's it. Simple as that. That's our goal. So a couple of notes on it. And again, if anything doesn't make sense, feel free to shout it out. Sequence matters. The order we put things in. Has anyone seen the show Hot Ones, the YouTube show Hot Ones? It's beautiful. Not just because, so it's, if you haven't seen it, it's interview show / torture experience. It's where they're interviewing anything from celebrities to scientists to politicians to whoever. And they got 10 questions and 10 hot wings. And each wing gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. And by the way, I'm not suggesting for liberating structures you should start incorporating hot sauce. That's not the intentional thing we're putting in there. But what's interesting about it is the quality of the questions. So when Aleksandra was talking about this idea of attention and listening and really going deep into it, there have actually been a number of academic studies done, not on the hot sauce aspect, but on Sean Evans' questioning skills and how he's structuring them to gradually get people to a place where they're hearing something they haven't heard before. It's not the same old question, the same old thing. It's taking them to a space of greater honesty. There's actually some really kind of cool, fun research studies on this in different areas. Has anyone ever seen there was a great research study called The Experimental Generation of Interpersonal Closeness. You probably have seen the New York Times article that was written about it, the Pop article. You know it, right?
Is it the 36 questions?
Bingo. So New York Times rebranded it as 36 questions that will make you fall in love with anyone. So that was the rebranding of it, but it was an actual research study about how we sequence questions and sequence a dialogue. It wasn't designed to make you fall in love with someone, I should emphasize that, but it was designed to create interpersonal closeness through this sequencing of scaffolded questions that get deeper and deeper. And that's what liberating structures is really about. It's about taking conversations in a very scaffolded way to a much deeper place. So part of this is really in liberating structures, it's about taking ownership away from some like disciplinary person just putting it out there and really transferring that ownership to the people in the room. If you've ever seen like a structured dialogue where it's just someone like me, up on stage, this kind of thing, for the audience it might make them go, oh yeah, that's interesting, that kind of TED Talk vibe. But in terms of actually transferring ownership and really taking it on as something that they're doing in a participatory way, it's a missing of it. It could be inspirational, but it's not participatory. Easy way to think about this is origami swans. Has anyone ever made one of these? They're pretty cool, they're fun, they're lovely. Made them as a kid. But there was a cool experiment they did at Stanford where they took two groups of people, divided them in half, the group, not the people. And just to be very clear, it's not a medical experiment. And the interesting piece about it was they asked one group, how much would you pay for the swan? Average price people will pay, average price people will pay $1 or $2, not much. Like it's a paper swan. Second group was actually taught how to make the swan, how to actually do it. Now at the end, swans are not a scarce resource. They could make as many as they want, but they're still asked, how much would you charge if you sold this? Was it higher or lower? Higher, yeah, substantially higher, around $10. Simply the act of owning the process made them have a much deeper value for it. Similar to what John Dewey says, the person doing the most talking is doing the most learning. So it's this idea of really embracing and getting them talking, them doing things. It doesn't have to be big changes. With liberating structures, it's little tiny things. Like for example, if you ask an audience, what do you think? Just like this big, bold, open question, you might just get crickets and silence. But if you ask the exact same audience, what are two changes I would make, like a sentence starter, a structured message that they can complete, you suddenly get hundreds and hundreds of answers coming out. And a lot of the training I do is cross-cultural, so I'll work in like Korea, Japan, etc. And we'll see trainers who are coming from overseas, from Europe, from the States, who've never trained over there. They'll use these big open questions, hear nothing, but if they simply tweaked the interaction slightly, used a slightly more structured dialogue, that structure would actually create freedom. And that's why we're calling it liberating structures. I should make a note, I did not name it, but that's where the name comes from. I have no creation power in this, and in fact, the creators of liberating structures aren't actually creators, they're curators. Has anyone seen like the website for liberating structures, any of that kind of stuff? If you've never seen it, by the way, so all this stuff is free, that's the best part about it. There's no copyright on it, it is actually curated. Let me just show you briefly the website itself. Can I make a note? Since we've got designers in the room, would some designer please, 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 out of the charity of their heart, go and help them with their website, because good God, it's such a brilliant concept, but when you see their website, and I speak to the people who are running it, it is ugly as sin. So it's just, I know. But anyway, so it's a menu, it's really a menu. This is the core of liberating structures. It's a menu of techniques. And I'm gonna show you a couple of them just really briefly. We're not gonna dive too deep, but just show you a couple. It's a menu of techniques, some of which you've probably already done, and they're small little moves, and if you zoom into something like, for example, what I need from you, and this is one we actually did today. So we're trying to get people, in this case it was a leadership forum, trying to get them, they often do these like mapping out of what we're gonna do next year, big plans, but they're vague, they're wishy-washy, it's this like hypothetical construct, and they're not really gonna do it. Instead, with liberating structures, we were able to zoom into the very human, personal level, because ultimately everyone who's going to change this organization in the next 2 to 3 years was there in the room today. Everyone who's going to say yes or no to them on something was there in the room. So we did an activity called literally what I need from you. And so for that, they actually had some task. They had set these big goals, and what they had to do was to literally find an exact person, and it's like, I've been up all day, so I'm saying literally way more than usual. Find an exact person and go, hey, Dave, your name's not Dave, I know, but that's fine. Dave, what I need from you is this. And Dave at that point has the choice to respond yes, no, or an explanation, deeper dive. So it's really, this structure is giving them the freedom to talk about things that they wouldn't normally talk about. So it's really, really powerful in that way, just little tiny changes. Ultimately, to go back to what Aleksandra's talking about, liberating structures is about empathy. Easy way to think about it is this unusual gentleman here. Why is he wearing this uniform, this outfit? He's wearing it for his job, I promise. Aleksandra might have, but or maybe not. He's wearing it for his job. Any guess?
Special forces?
I like this, special forces. We got some designers in the room.
Forces, maybe special forces.
Special horses or special forces? This is going to be a very interesting Instagram stream. We're going to go off tangent. We're going to start using Dolly to do entire things on special horses. Yeah.
Trying to feel how it feels like to be an elderly.
Spot on. You put on so this is called an empathy suit. It's literally called an empathy suit. I said literally again, that's 12 times in the last 5 minutes, that's fine. It's an old age simulation suit. And this is critical because we want him to feel, hear, all this kind of stuff that he's older, so that when he's designing for them, he's feeling that. Liberating structures again, it's so cool. It is. Well, it's really important. Like, for example, my brother is left-handed. Any left-handers in the room? You're awesome if you are. No. Posit society is biased against left-handers. There's none in the room. I'm just kidding. Not really. I know, it's okay. So my brother's awesome, but he's also statistically about 1.7 times more likely to be injured in a product accident than I am, because most product designers are right-handed designing for right-handers. They're not perspective-taking. Part of what liberating structures does is it forces this perspective-taking in a scaffolded way. It gets people to think in these shoes of others. Because, as was pointed out by Aleksandra in her talk, we're really bad listeners a lot of the time. As Covey famously said, most people don't listen with the intent to understand, they just listen with the intent to reply. We're mostly just waiting for our turn to talk. We are kind of listening, but we're really check listening. We got like this bingo board of things that we want to say, and we're just listening enough that we can connect it to that. Liberating structures is structures that create, through their actual sequencing, attention. You can't avoid it. It's like a side effect of the structure is that you're more intentional, you're following this thing, and that structure really does create the freedom to be in a better place for listening.
So T is a liberating structure.
What is?
My T thing is a liberating structure.
Your T, yeah, it's not on the official map, but we could add it. We could absolutely add it. Like, there are other things beyond liberating structures that work and stuff. Like, for example, like De Bono did his like whole six thinking hats kind of thing. No, this is not a pitch for De Bono's lateral six thinking hats. I need to emphasize that. But one of the hats, this idea of the negative hat. So, for example, I do work in Japan where oftentimes going against the grain, where it's like, oh, saying what's wrong with this when we're trying to do problem solving is going to be a no-no. But one of my colleagues, Keiko Tagada, the moment he does this, where he's like, you're wearing the problem finder hat, your role, your job is to find problems, and simply by giving people that role, it frees them to actually speak on that. So it's not, oh, I'm telling you what's wrong with this thing, what could go wrong. My role is to tell you what's wrong with that thing. So it creates freedom through the actual process. And so liberating structure is similar to that. Last but not least, it's just the simple idea that really connection matters in this, and it's all about creating it in a very confined process. Easy way to think about it is this. What's this? Is this early Dyson vacuum prototype? It says yes. An air cleaner or a hair cutting machine? Just quick show of hands, I'm kind of curious. Who thinks it's a hair cutting machine? No one? Too bad. It does kind of resemble a Flowbee. It's what George Clooney used to cut his hair, but it's not that. Air cleaner?
Apollo.
Hair cutting machine? You go back to hair cutting machine. Okay, we're just going back. Dyson prototype? Anyone Dyson prototype?
Dyson prototype, maybe.
Yeah, so this is, it is actually, yeah, no, it's this, which is from the Apollo 13. And this was what they jury-rigged together to actually be able to survive. The ship, kind of not exploded, but it had a disaster. They got to get back to land, to Earth. They're not going to the moon anymore, but the air is just filling with dirty stuff. They can't breathe, and they don't have any new tools to work with. They have to work with what they've got. It's creativity with constraints. Liberating structures creates constraints. You're not going off in 100 random directions. You're working within a very constrained framework, but that constrained framework forces us to be in the path of creativity, and it really forces us to think a bit differently. So it's ultimately this idea that, are we shaping our space to match our use case? Or as Lenny Scott Weber says, if the space doesn't give us permission to change, it's too easy to revert back to what we know. So just to give you a couple examples of this, just really quickly. Again, we got our whole little menu here. Some of the ones that most people are familiar with is things like open space, where it's just the lovely giant wandering, where people are free to, they're following that law of 2 feet, where you can walk around talking to people. It's a glorified intellectual cocktail party, but it's awesome. The one more common one is something like 1, 2, 4 all, where I get you to think of something by yourself. I know that sounds like the world's simplest thing, but 9 times out of 10, we're in like a workshop or discussion setting. When we say brainstorm, it's not really brainstorming, it's people just instantly going into groupthink. And the loudest voices, leadership versus leadership, the loudest voices are where people gravitate. By starting with 1, 2, 4 all, it starts with a single person, you think to yourself, you've got that time to build and self-reflect. Then 2, you pair up with someone and share. 4, larger group, and finally all in plenary. Incredibly simple, but it's an incredibly powerful build that can be sequenced into other things. Today, actually, what we were using is something from Gustavo Rossetti called the Culture Design Canvas. Now note, this is not a liberating structure, but what I wanted to say about it is we combined this with actually the TRIZ. TRIZ is a fancy way of saying what we would call bad idea brainstorming. So they're trying to map out a more powerful culture for their company. How do we want to be going forward in terms of our meetings, priorities, and what they start with, what TRIZ essentially starts with, is let's say we're talking about designing better meetings. We first have time where we spend, if I wanted to destroy this company in the next year, if I wanted to do the worst possible things, how in 6 months could we put in practices that would totally destroy it? That's the more dramatic version of TRIZ, but that's basically what it is. But then after you've had them brainstorm it, and there's a lot of laughter when they do it, because it's very freeing to go that direction, you pause, you step back, and you ask, okay, great. To what degree these terrible practices you put forward, to what degree are we in some way in our company currently doing some of them? And you just see people's faces drop when they go, oh God, we're actually doing some of the worst practices that are going to tank us. And it has this giant aha moment before we spin into some of the better stuff. Again, I'm not going to walk you through the entire giant menu of all these things, but there's lots and lots of these that we can actually do it. So, you know, if it was like, how can we improve transport in HK, you'd come with a bunch of bad ideas, and then we'd move to the good ones. Another one, what I need from you, we did that today. We literally had people asking that and going up and taking that commitment. Let's see, what are the other ones I like? Wise crowds is a good fun one. This is just simply a consultative exercise. You basically, the one conceit I like about this is, let's say Ilya's got a problem. Do you have any problems in it? Oh, I figured. About the tea industry, all that. So Ilya, the client, would present their challenge and request for help for about 2 minutes. Your group might be these like 3 or 4 people around you. They then get to ask the client, you, clarifying questions for 2 minutes. Again, very structured, but it's freeing them to ask questions they might be nervous about. Then you turn your back. Now, if we're doing this virtually, we have people actually literally still turn their back to the camera, and you think that's not going to make a difference turning around. It completely does. Because the consultants, although they're still allowed to talk to the client and ask them more questions, they really start talking to each other, planning and stuff, and it just opens up the entire conversation, finally giving that advice, and then finally hearing back from the client, how was that advice? And the experience is always very, very powerful, and simply, again, by shaping spaces, changing the dialogue, structuring it, it opens up new possibilities. Now, if it seems like I'm going scattershot, it's honestly because liberating structures is a bit scattershot. It's really a menu of options that you've got to go and explore to figure out how you might weave them and knit them together. And if you're just using them as like the be-all and end-all one-stop shop, I don't recommend it. But as something that feeds into other practices, it's incredibly powerful for having ideas for structuring things. We were using some of them today to spot Thomasons. Is anyone familiar with a Thomason? Last point I'm going to make. Yeah, Thomason. So this is a Thomason. It's an example of one. This is a door that no longer serves a purpose. At one point it did. It's still maintained, but it serves no purpose. Now it's an architectural feature that at one point made sense, but now serves no purpose, but we're still putting resources towards it. This word, where does it come from? Any guess? It's from architects, but which country?
Netherlands?
Netherlands? Actually, Japan. Now, people are going, Thomason doesn't sound like a very Japanese word, but it's actually from Japanese architects in the 1970s, and it's named after an American baseball player who was a very good baseball player in the US, went to play in Japan during his retirement years, and was awful, like did nothing. He sat on the bench, still got paid, so he was still having resources go to him, but he did nothing. And so the architects in Japan are like, we gotta name this architectural feature after him. Imagine that you're memorizing architecture for being like an incredibly lazy baseball player, which I thought was great. But I love this idea, this concept. So liberating structures, again, in this case, we were using some of the different methodologies, using wide crowds to get them to unpack what are some things in your organization that are Thomasons, things that we are still maintaining, still putting effort towards, but aren't really doing anything. And that's really how I use it in my practice and stuff. But yeah, that's ultimately it. I am a big believer, as Ed Box says, all models are wrong, but some are useful. It's not the be-all and end-all, but I really encourage you to go and explore it. It's something that's really interesting in terms of looking at how we can structure and scaffold dialogues for greater empathy, deeper discussion, etc. That's like 24 minutes, right? Something like that.
And it was brilliant, yes.
Yeah, I said 20 minutes.
A bit more, but it's okay.
Is it? We started late. Anyways, whatever. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thanks. I know what we're doing now. That's it. We're going to dance back and forth. Cool. And you want your screen back?
I do.
Do you want me to do it for you? Or you good?
You got it? Just take off yours, right?
No, literally it takes over. So if you go up to your AirPlay, it's going to kill mine, which is what you want. It'll pop up that number and it's good. Yeah.
Okay, let's try that. I'm trying that. I'm trying that.
It's very aggressive.
Display, and then I go to my thing, and I do like Apple TV 1. And
Yeah, and it's going to show it. Hey, look at that. See, thumbs up. Jawohl.
okay. So it was Joshua Davies himself.
I hope so.
It's my music. It's my music.
And yeah, thanks you for the royalties.
Okay, so we heard from Aleksandra and we heard from Joshua. Thank you so much. I didn't have enough time to do slides.
I so want to steal that slide. That's beautiful. That's the best slide I've seen in years. That is awesome.
So I want to say thank you for people who cook the food, for volunteer. Gia actually need to run, so she had like a dinner with her family. But she actually, she organized everything related to food. I want to say thank you to sponsor Lottie Files, to all of you bringing yourself here, all of you bringing yourself inside my phone, and sitting inside my phone. Thank you for sitting inside my phone. For you,
Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you. So you can volunteer as well, especially if you're young, have all the energy. You should volunteer. It's good, you're working for free, but you're learning a lot. We have 3 volunteers right now. One is doing research on all my students. I have 32 students before. So 17, 18, 19. So we decided to ask them how they're doing. They seem to be doing all right. So we're doing this like a formal research about that. And she's not associated with me at all, so she just went there and doing this. We're studying a new course. Oh, music is too loud. We're studying a new course. I did it again, 17, 18, 19. We did a big pause. I'm restarting my UXD course in 2 weeks from now. So if you want to level up in design, learn about liberating structures, maybe learn about facilitation, or maybe you transition into user experience design, or maybe it's not about you, maybe it's about your friend. Tell them. Ilya is back in the teaching gig. So it's a part-time, twice a week, 6 to 9, I'm teaching design. 8 weeks and you're a designer. You were not designer before, but then 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you're a designer. It starts in 2 weeks. It goes for 8 weeks, real projects, real briefs. It's fun. So at this point, this is the only question you have. And this is the only answer I'm going to give. You can scan any of those. No.
What about my toaster?
If you're not there yet, so this is our WhatsApp community. You join there, you're going to enter in the entry. Inside the entry, someone will talk with you, and then you need to leave entry because if it's too many people inside the entry, like it's crowded. And you will choose whatever place you want to be. You need to go?
Yeah, call me if you're.
I think we'll figure out. Then Joshua was curious what we're going to do next. After we do this, we're going to have another break very quick, and then we're going to make a circle of chairs. If you're not comfortable with circles or chairs, you can leave, it's fine. But if you're comfortable, we're going to sit in a circle of chairs. We're going to have a little bit of conversation. Any questions you might have during this, but didn't ask, or maybe anything, suggestions, thoughts which are caught inside you, whatever, like you listen to Aleksandra and she's like, how are you? And you're like, I'm like this, but I'm not going to tell you. You can tell her now when we make a circle. So this is the way to connect. And it's